Welcome to this week's BTO talk on AI, generative AI, digital leadership and digital transformation. My great pleasure to have you here. My name is Michael Alf, calling from Lisbon, and I am one of the three co-founders of Beyond the Obvious, where we work with organizations in Europe, Middle East, and Asia on their digital transformation journey. And I'm joined by one of my partners, Rob. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Rob Thurner here in London, working with Cambridge Judge Business School, with clients and other business schools on their transformation journeys. And it would be a great start, Michael, if you could kick us off with the latest tech news. So what have you seen in the last 7 days, and how is that relevant to our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I picked an interesting topic, which I briefly want to talk about, just to highlight that. And you might have read about Claude Desktop. So kind of Claude is from Anthropic, as you might know, one of the big models. And desktop solution is really kind of changing the way how you potentially work on your computer. And one of the big questions is, should you try that? And in principle, I do encourage trials and testing things out, because that's the best way to learn. Yeah, so building your chatbots, your own GPTs on ChatGPT, and so on and so forth. Where kind of with these solutions, they are basically getting access to your desktop and therefore potentially to all your files and so on. You need to also take into account the risk profile. Yeah, so, and you can imagine you have a personal assistant who has access to your computer. Yeah, not only to, let's say, your calendar, but actually to your complete computer. And you see already the risks. Yeah, if kind of if this person doesn't know exactly what to do, not talking about actually malicious, yeah, so intentionally malicious, but then there might happen really bad things in terms of sensitive data, of course, getting somewhere, or other things which you don't want to happen. And so the same is, of course, with these tools. The challenge is these tools become more and more autonomous. And if you provide too much autonomy, then, of course, the risks are increasing. And you remember probably the quote, with great powers and comes great, Rob?
Well, responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's also risk, yeah? And so responsibility is one of our key areas we need to be careful about. How much do we want to take control ourselves, and how much do we want to devolve responsibility? And if the risks are that high and potentially your whole work system is exposed, then of course there are very significant risks. So this is an interesting one. The worst doom mongers would be saying, the robots are in control and we lose control and we pass over too much responsibility. So that raises a really interesting question about how do we make sure that that level of responsibility is contained, and the autonomy and the degree to which the tools are able to act autonomously. How do we stop that happening, Michael? What would be the tips for a CIO or for an entrepreneur starting their business and wanting to use the efficiencies provided by Claude Desktop? What guidance would you give there?
Yeah, I think that's some great points, Rob, which you are making. So super relevant. And it's only evolving now. So it's brand new topics, and we see again it's impacting how we work. So there's on different levels I think you have to act. One is you need to think about, okay, what actually do you want and how do you work with something like that? Yeah, so which has new capabilities. This starts with ChatGPT and co. It goes to AI workflows. Now it goes to tools like kind of the desktop or browsers, AI browsers. And they have kind of they are quite powerful. So that's one component. This is a principal future of work discussion. How do we work with these tools? We have to learn that. We have to understand how much autonomy there is, and so on and so forth. That's for all of us. The other aspect is when you asked kind of for the CIO or CISO, the security officer. This is a huge challenge as well, because these things are moving so fast. And they bring completely new sets of threats and risks with it. So most likely larger organizations will be very hesitant. They are already quite hesitant when it comes to, let's say, AI models. Yeah, so there are discussions. Okay, do we need our own model? Do we need to have our own chatbot and things like that? So that's already partially happening, especially for larger organizations. I think startups are more flexible. For them it's a lot easier. And what I see is kind of that will delay the uptake of the solutions, which of course then means you're not getting the benefits also. So therefore, potentially, you're falling behind against someone, let's say kind of a startup competitor, who actually is able to utilize those tools. There is a discussion right now in terms of companies who are not completely autonomous, but who are combining a lot of these AI workflows and autonomous agents and things like that to build complete businesses. So this is, again, very early stages. But that's kind of, so you need to kind of look at that, I think, from a personal space, trying that out. Maybe you set up a separate computer, where you try out things, which is kind of detached from actually your main working computer. This is kind of a very practical tip. If you really want to kind of get into it, then this could well work. And then you learn actually what works and what doesn't work. Still, you need to be aware, of course, that there are risks you don't know yet.
Yeah, interesting. So this gets us into a second topic we'd like to cover today, around the use of tools, and to what degree should we be experimenting with different tools? What are the pros and cons? And is the tool conversation the right one? Now, we're running a lot of workshops, preparing one right now for a commodities and trading business, and one of their big areas is how do we, as a holding company, how do we set some standards and governance for the different operating units within our organization, and should we be recommending that a certain set of tools are followed by all of them, or give a greater degree of autonomy to each? So this then raises the question, how much should we be focusing on the tools themselves, and how much should we be thinking, well, the tools come and go. There's going to be some transitory nature here to the number and the usage of these tools. And actually our mindset needs to be somewhere else, which is how do we encourage our teams to be working on the principles rather than getting fixed with the tools themselves. And so there are two very strong views here. If we don't try things out, then we're not going to learn, and the tools enable us to do that. But then getting too aligned to the tools is potentially a risk. We have to unlearn and unuse, and then use other tools in the future. So how do you square this conundrum, Michael? What's your perspective here?
I think it's indeed, well, I mean, we see that, in our work with our clients. And you just brought up a good example for a workshop you are preparing, which again, I think that adds some additional complexity because you have a holding. So again, then it becomes the question, what's the role of the holding? That discussion probably in itself isn't new, but putting the light on AI onto it is an interesting perspective. So, I mean, learning the whole thing only really works when you do it. So you can only learn swimming when you swim. So you can read a lot of books about swimming, but if you're not getting wet, you're not learning swimming. The same is applies, of course, for AI and generative AI. So you have to somehow, of course, embrace the tools to some extent to really understand that. And this is particularly true for understanding how AI workflows are working. What is different about them and what can be done, because it's a very new aspect. And then with the higher levels, kind of agentic systems, even more so. But what I'm also seeing is there's too much focus on actually what is the right tool. And I think this is probably not kind of the conversation leading in the right direction. Because they're constantly changing, and it's less about actually picking the exactly right tool because transient, as you said, there's a lot of change. It's much more important to really become good at these tools on this kind of consumer level, or even on the corporate level, on the consumer level. So that is a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude. And then on that next level, AI workflows, it's not about the tools, it's not about the models, It's actually about how workflows work. Where do you want to build in human in the loop? These are the conversations you need to have. This is a very different conversation to have. And then you have your discussion on the board level, even more so. They need to kind of course, address the question, okay, are we okay to use a large language model, which is an US model, for example, or do you want to have a European model or an Arabic model, or a Chinese model? So kind of these are more governance questions. And then from my perspective, I think they need to guide then their organizations, so their companies, in actually kind of give this guiding principles, not determining the tools. I don't think that's kind of the right path. It's more like kind of these guiding principles. What are your thoughts? I mean, kind of there is another point, of course, saying, well, we can say, okay, here in this holding and the companies, it's all, let's say, Gemini, to pick one. Okay.
Yeah, look, I think to take a step back, the answer lies in what level of maturity has the organization got to already? How much understanding and experience does the board level have, do the operating units have? And then making a decision based on being very pragmatic about what they need to do, how they either get started, if they've only dipped a toe in the water, back to your swimming analogy, or if they're swimming multiple lengths and they're fluid, then doing really well, then of course there needs to be a different set of guidance. I think there will be some questions here about cost and investment in different tools, and clearly the more concentrated those investments sit, then the greater efficiency they will realize, but also having consistency. So what's happening in one unit, one business unit, can be transferred to the other, and that's bound to make their upskilling process simpler for the organization, and also the governance across those different operating units easier to achieve. So I think it's going to depend on the organization itself. What have they done? What's their appetite? And being very clear about where are the areas they should be focusing their attention on. Where is all the noise and all the sense that we should be doing this, we should be doing that, that isn't actually delivering those efficiencies or potentially those revenue increases, which are more evident if they took a step back and considered, what's really important for the organization versus what do they feel they should be doing based on what they're reading and hearing from others. And I think this peer pressure and a sense of we should be doing this is probably clouding a lot of decisions at the moment. Are you experiencing the same?
Well, definitely. I think especially large organizations are really challenged. I had another meeting this week. So when you think about a large organization, so most of them are now on their AI journey, more or less. So they have either AI competence centers, they've done some training sessions and so on, but the actual implementation isn't really moving forward fast. That is actually now the big challenge, because somehow it's now centrally developed. That's always kind of that that argument. So you can't do anything because otherwise we're doing it twice. And I believe that's the wrong thinking. For many aspects. So, and again, that is a management and board task. So how do you set the governance and the guidelines around that? Because I make a very simple point. If let's say you have a corporate head office, let's say in Paris, and you have a subsidiary here in Portugal, then why shouldn't the Portuguese subsidiary not be able to do something if they get the ROI? And if the ROI is in a relatively short period of time, then it doesn't matter if you double up, if you do it twice, because you already get your ROI within, let's say, 6 months or less. And if the central department takes somewhere between 9, 12, 18 months, there's enough time to earn your money back. So you are actually making progress. And it's not only the direct ROI progress, by the way. The second big benefit is the learning, the maturity. Because by using let's say, an AI workflow tool, which is not the one which is centrally used, you're still learning how AI workflows work. So you're building up this muscle in the organization, which is another key aspect. And then the central solution comes, and you just replace it. And I say, okay, now we have the central one, and now we are kind of playing all on the same piano, if you like. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, and there's a super big tension in larger organizations who can't quickly decide and move forward.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. And going back to the swing analogy, you could argue that having different competitors in each lane trying different things out, if we take an oversight of what they're doing, we can then see which ones are performing fastest, getting that ROI, and then that signals, well, where's best practice and how can we transfer across without having to wait these 12, 18 months for head office to make those decisions. Interesting, Michael. Interesting conundrum there. So thanks for sharing that with us. Now, what have we got coming up? We've got this trip to Doha, where we'll be at the Web Summit. So if you're going to be there, please get in contact. We'd love to see you there. We'll be sharing back with you what we are doing there and the contacts we're making. Any other things in the pipeline that you want to share before we close today?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Well, really, we invite you to Doha to see us. Here's the newsletter, community.beyondtheobvious.co/newsletter. Join us. There you get kind of the updated information, both from this sessions and of course what we are doing in Doha. And again, if any of these topics or questions resonate with us, with you, reach out to us. There's so many ways we are working with our clients. From the top to very operational, tactical things like kind of more hands-on aspects and helping with the governance, the roadmap, and so on. So reach out to us either that way or of course on our website or via the QR code which leads then into our WhatsApp group. And we look forward to this one. And we look forward to either seeing you here with hear from you questions, or maybe see you in Doha at our booth, which is actually on the Monday, which I think is the 2nd of February. So kind of it's the one Monday of the Web Summit in Doha. If you want to talk to us in person and validate that we are not avatars here talking.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you for the wrap up. Great to have you with us this week, and we look forward to seeing you next time.